The paper looked ordinary at first, just a single sheet, white, folded once down the middle. But the moment I started reading it, I realized something was very wrong. There were 10 rules on that paper, 10 simple instructions for my first night shift, but the more I read them, the less they made sense. Rule number 1 said, do not open the emergency room doors between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. Rule number 2 said, if you hear footsteps in the hallway outside room 204, do not look. And rule number 7 simply said, if the man without a face asks for help, ignore him. At the time, I thought it was some kind of joke. Hospitals are stressful places, night shifts are long. Maybe the staff liked messing with new employees. But after what happened that night, I realized something terrifying. Those rules were not jokes, they were warnings. My name is Daniel. 3 months ago, I got a job working the night shift at Westbridge Medical Center. It wasn't exactly my dream job, but it paid well. And after spending almost a year unemployed, I wasn't in a position to be picky. Westbridge wasn't a big hospital. In fact, it was strangely quiet for a place like that, located just outside a small town, surrounded by miles of forest. The building always felt a little isolated, but the manager assured me everything was normal. He told me my job was simple: night security, walk the halls, check the doors, make sure nothing strange happened. Ironically, something strange happened on my very first night. I arrived at the hospital around 9:40 p.m. My shift started at 10. The parking lot was almost empty. Only a few cars sat under the dim yellow lights. The building looked older than I expected. Concrete walls, flickering lights, long dark windows reflecting the empty parking lot. It felt less like a hospital, and more like a place people forgot about. Inside, the lobby was quiet, too quiet. A single receptionist sat behind the front desk, slowly typing something on her computer. She looked up when I walked in. New security? She asked. Yeah, I said. She gave a small smile, but something about it looked forced, almost nervous. You should go downstairs, she said. Security office is in the basement. Basements in hospitals are never comforting, but I nodded and followed the hallway toward the elevators. The lights above flickered softly as I walked, and for the first time that night, I had the strange feeling that the building itself was watching me. The basement smelled like disinfectant and old metal. Dim lights buzzed above rows of storage rooms and maintenance doors. At the end of the hallway, I found a door labeled security. Inside was a small room filled with monitors. Dozens of camera feeds showed different parts of the hospital: hallways, staircases, waiting rooms, and sitting in a chair near the desk was an older man. He looked like he had been working night shifts for decades. Gray beard, heavy eyelids, coffee cup in his hand. He looked at me for a moment, then sighed. You must be the new guy, Daniel, I said. Martin. He stood slowly and stretched his back. Your early manager said 10. Martin checked the clock. Yeah, close enough. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, the same paper that would later haunt my thoughts. He handed it to me without explanation. Read it carefully, he said. I laughed a little. What is this? Martin didn't laugh. His expression stayed completely serious. Your rules. I unfolded the paper. 10 rules, each written in plain black text, but the longer I stared at them, the more uneasy I felt. Westbridge night security rules: do not open the emergency room doors between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. If you hear footsteps outside room 204, do not investigate. The elevator may sometimes stop on floor 5. Do not exit. If a child asks you where their parents are, notify the nurses immediately. If the hallway lights begin turning off one by one, walk away calmly. Do not enter storage room B after midnight. If you see a man without a face, ignore him. The radio may occasionally receive messages from unknown sources. Do not respond. If someone knocks on the security office door after 2:30 a.m., do not open it. At 4 a.m., check the cameras. If one hallway appears empty, but the motion sensor activates, turn the monitor off immediately. I stared at the paper, then looked back at Martin. You serious? He didn't smile, he didn't explain, he just said something that made my stomach tighten. Most people quit before the third night. I assumed the list was a prank. Hospitals have strange humor, so I folded the paper, placed it in my pocket, and grabbed the security radio. Martin stayed behind, watching the monitors. "Just do your patrol every hour," he said. "Everything else, you'll figure out." That sentence bothered me, but I ignored it. The hospital halls were quiet. Most patients were asleep. Machines beeped softly behind closed doors. Nurses whispered at their stations. The kind of quiet that almost feels peaceful. But around 11:30 p.m., that quiet started to feel different, heavier, like something was slowly waking up inside the building. By the time my second patrol started, the hospital felt different. During the day, hospitals are full of life. Doctors walking quickly down the halls, phones ringing, machines beeping. But at night, the building felt hollow, like most of the life inside it had already left. The lights in the hallways were dimmed to a soft yellow glow, and every sound echoed my footsteps. The hum of the lights, even the distant creaking of the building settling. I walked slowly past the patient rooms, checking doors and emergency exits. Everything looked normal, at least, for a while. Then I reached the second floor hallway, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming from around the corner ahead of me. I instinctively stepped forward, then suddenly remembered something. Rule number 2, if you hear footsteps outside room 200, but do not investigate. I stopped. The footsteps continued. Step, step, step. They sounded like someone walking slowly along the hallway floor. I looked up at the room numbers. Then, 204, the footsteps stopped, right outside the door. My heart started beating faster. For a moment I thought maybe it was just a nurse, but something about the silence that followed felt wrong. Too quiet. I waited. 30 seconds passed. Nothing moved. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I slowly leaned forward, just enough to peek around the corner. The hallway was empty. Completely empty. No nurses, no patients, no one. Just the long, quiet corridor stretching into darkness, and yet, I was absolutely certain I had heard someone walking there. I returned to the security office around midnight. Martin was still watching the monitors. He didn't ask how the patrol went. He simply glanced at me and said, "You heard something, didn't you?" I stopped. "How did you know?" Martin took a sip of his coffee. "You were gone longer than usual." I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Footsteps near room 204, Martin nodded slowly, then asked a question that made my skin crawl. "Did you look?" I shrugged, just for a second. For the first time that night, Martin looked genuinely concerned. "You shouldn't do that." I laughed nervously. It was just an empty hallway. Martin didn't respond. He simply turned back toward the camera screens, and whispered quietly, "That's what it wants you to think." Around 1 a.m., I started my third patrol. Most of the hospital was now completely silent. Even the nurses were quieter, like everyone was trying not to disturb something. I walked toward the elevator at the end of the corridor. The plan was simple. Ride it up to the 4th floor, check the hallways, then come back down. I pressed the button. The elevator arrived almost instantly. The doors slid open with a soft mechanical sound. Inside was empty. I stepped in, pressed 4. The doors closed. The elevator began to move. For a few seconds everything felt normal. Then suddenly, the elevator stopped. The digital display above the door lit up. 5. My stomach tightened. I remembered another rule. Rule number 3. The elevator may sometimes stop on floor 5. Do not exit. I stared at the glowing number 5. But I was sure Westbridge Hospital only had 4 floors. The doors slowly opened. The dark hallway waited outside. The lights were dimmer than the rest of the building, and something about the air beyond the doorway looked strange, almost like a thin fog. I stood frozen inside the elevator. Every instinct told me to step out, just to check, just to see what was there. But the rule echoed in my mind. Do not exit. So I did nothing. After about 10 seconds, the doors slowly closed again. The elevator continued moving, and finally stopped at 4. When the doors opened again, the normal hospital hallway stood waiting. Bright lights, clean floors, everything looked normal again. But my hands were shaking, because now I knew something for sure. The rules were not a joke. The 4th floor was mostly pediatric rooms. children's ward. Bright cartoon murals decorated the walls, animals, rainbows, smiling clouds. But at 1:40 in the morning, those decorations looked strangely unsettling. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard a small voice. "Excuse me." I turned around. A little girl stood near the nurse station. She couldn't have been older than 6. Long dark hair, hospital gown, bare feet on the cold floor. For a moment I felt relieved. Finally, something normal. "Hey," I said gently. "You shouldn't be out here." The girl looked up at me with wide eyes. "Do you know where my parents are?" My chest tightened. Another rule flashed in my memory. Rule number 4. If a child asks where their parents are, notify the nurses immediately. I glanced around. The nurse station was empty, which was strange. Someone should have been there. "Let's find a nurse," I told her. But the girl didn't move. She just kept staring at me. Then she asked something that made my blood run cold. "Why are you the only one who can see me?" The question hung in the air. Why are you the only one who can see me? For a second I thought I had misheard her. "What?" I asked. The little girl tilted her head slightly. Her expression wasn't scared. It wasn't confused either. It looked curious, like she was studying me. "Everyone else walks past me," she said softly. "But you stopped." My mouth suddenly felt dry. I looked around again. The hallway was completely empty. No nurses, no doctors, just the quiet hum of fluorescent lights above us. "Where is your room?" I asked. The girl didn't answer. Instead, she slowly pointed toward the far end of the hallway, toward a dark corner where the lights seemed dimmer. Down there. Something about the way she said it made me uneasy. But she was just a child. At least she looked like one. So I started walking. She followed a few steps behind me. Her bare feet made no sound on the floor. That was the first detail that bothered me. Hospitals are quiet places at night. Even the smallest sounds echo, but her footsteps made nothing, not a single sound. We stopped outside room 214. The door was slightly open. I gently pushed it wider. The room was dark. Only the soft glow of a medical monitor lit the bed. But the bed was empty. No patient, no personal belongings, nothing. Just neatly folded sheets. I turned back toward the girl, but she was no longer standing in the hallway. She was inside the room, standing beside the bed, watching me. "How did you?" I stopped mid-sentence. Because I hadn't heard the door open, or footsteps, or anything. She simply appeared there. The monitor beside the bed suddenly flickered. The girl looked down at it, then back at me. "They said they would come back," she whispered. Something cold crawled up my spine. "Who said that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and pointed behind me. I turned. The hallway lights outside the room began turning off. One by one, click. Darkness swallowed the far end of the corridor. Click. Another section went black. Click. Closer now. My heart slammed against my chest. Another rule flashed into my mind. Rule number 5. If the hallway lights begin turning off one by one, walk away calmly. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I simply stepped backward out of the room, then turned and walked. Slowly, calmly, just like the rule said. Behind me, the lights continued, shutting off. Click, click, click. The darkness crept closer with every step. My entire body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to keep walking, slow, controlled, until I reached the elevator. Only then did I press the button. The doors opened immediately. As I stepped inside, I looked back down the hallway. The girl was standing at the end of it, in the darkness, watching me. The doors closed. When I returned to the security office, Martin looked up immediately. "You saw her. It wasn't a question." "You knew about the kid?" I asked. Martin leaned back in his chair. "Everyone who works long enough here sees her eventually." I stared at him. "You're telling me there's a ghost wandering around the hospital?" Martin shrugged. "Ghost, memory, something else. Doesn't really matter." He nodded toward the paper still in my pocket. "That's why the rules exist." I pulled the paper out again. My eyes scanned the list. That's when another rule caught my attention. Rule number 6. Do not enter storage room B after midnight. I looked up. "What's in storage room B?" Martin didn't answer right away. He simply watched the camera monitors, then quietly said, "Nothing you want to meet." The hospital had become even quieter, almost painfully silent. Martin continued watching the monitors. I sat across from him trying to process everything that had already happened. The footsteps, the 5th floor, the girl. My brain struggled to find a logical explanation. Then knock. The sound echoed softly through the security office. Someone tapped gently on the door. Both Martin and I froze. Another rule appeared instantly in my mind. Rule number 9. If someone knocks on the security office door after 2:30 a.m., do not open it. I checked the clock on the wall. 2:27 a.m. Martin frowned. That's early. Another knock. Softer this time, then a voice. Martin. It sounded weak, almost exhausted. Martin slowly stood up. That's one of the nurses. He walked toward the door, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. The voice outside sounded strange, like someone trying to imitate a human voice. Martin, please open the door. The clock ticked forward. 2:29 a.m. Martin stopped. He looked back at the clock, then at me. Neither of us moved. The voice came again, more desperate now. Martin, please. I need help. The clock changed. 2:30 a.m. Silence. Then the knocking stopped. Completely. Martin slowly stepped away from the door, his face pale. After a few seconds, something scraped gently across the other side of the door, like fingernails dragging across metal. Then a low whisper came through the wood. So close. Neither of us spoke for almost a full minute. The scratching sound outside the door had stopped, but the silence that followed felt worse, heavier, like something was still standing out there, listening. Martin slowly walked back to his chair. He didn't look at the door again. Instead, he picked up his coffee and took a long sip. His hand was shaking. That wasn't a nurse, I said quietly. Martin nodded. No. Then what was it? He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed at the paper in my hand. You read Rule 9. I looked down again. Rule number 9. If someone knocks on the security office door after 2:30 a.m., do not open it. I swallowed. So that thing out there, Martin finished the sentence for me, likes to pretend. The idea made my stomach turn. Something in the hospital could imitate voices, human voices, and it knew names. The quiet inside the security room slowly returned. The monitors continued showing empty hallways. Everything looked normal again. Almost too normal. Then suddenly the security radio on the desk crackled. Static filled the room. Neither of us touched it. The sound grew louder, then a voice broke through. Hello. It sounded distorted, like someone speaking through water. Martin looked at the radio but didn't pick it up. Another rule came to mind. Rule number 8. The radio may occasionally receive messages from unknown sources. Do not respond. The voice came again. Can anyone hear me? The signal crackled violently. Then the voice changed slightly. Lower, more desperate. I'm stuck on the 5th floor. My entire body froze. Martin slowly leaned forward, still not touching the radio. The voice continued. I've been here for hours. Please send someone. Please. Static filled the speaker again. Then the voice whispered something that made my blood run cold. Daniel, can you hear me? I stared at the radio. I had never used my name on the radio, not once. Martin reached over calmly and turned the radio off. The voice vanished instantly. The clock on the wall clicked forward. 3 a.m. Martin stood up immediately. Time to check the emergency entrance. Another rule flashed in my mind. Rule number 1. Do not open the emergency room doors between 3 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. Why check them if we're not supposed to open them? I asked. Martin grabbed a flashlight. To make sure they stay closed. We walked down the quiet hallway toward the emergency wing. The hospital felt colder now, like the temperature had dropped several degrees. When we reached the entrance doors, my heart stopped. They were slightly open, just a few inches. Cold night air drifted inside. Martin swore under his breath. That's not good. He carefully stepped closer, but he didn't touch the doors. Instead, he leaned forward. Peeking through the opening, I stood behind him. Do you see anyone? I asked. Martin didn't answer. He stayed perfectly still, then slowly stepped backward, his face pale. What? I whispered. Martin grabbed the handles of the doors, but instead of opening them, he pushed them closed, hard. The lock clicked. Only then did he look at me. There was someone standing outside who Martin swallowed. I don't know, but they were smiling. We returned to the security office. Neither of us spoke much. The hospital felt wrong now. like something had slipped inside when the doors opened. I watched the monitors nervously. Empty hallways, empty staircases. Everything looked normal. Then suddenly one of the motion sensors triggered. A small red icon flashed on the screen. Hallway C motion detected, but the camera showed nothing. Just an empty corridor. Another rule flashed through my mind. Rule number 10. At 4 a.m. check the cameras. If one hallway appears empty, but the motion sensor activates, turn the monitor off immediately. The clock read 3:24 a.m. Too early for Rule 10. But something was definitely moving. The red motion icon blinked again. Then again. Something invisible was walking through the hallway, and the camera couldn't see it. Martin slowly leaned toward the monitor. "Don't stare too long," he said quietly. "Why?" Martin didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Because sometimes," he paused, "it notices." I started another patrol. Martin stayed behind to watch the monitors. The hospital was almost completely dark now. Many hallway lights had dimmed automatically. I walked slowly through the second floor corridor again, trying not to think about everything that had already happened. Then I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. A man, tall, completely still. Relief washed over me. Finally, another person. "Sir," I called. No response. The man didn't move. He simply stood there facing my direction. I walked a little closer. The hallway light above him flickered. That's when I saw his face. Or rather, the lack of one where his eyes should have been. There was nothing. Where his nose should have been. Nothing. Just smooth, pale skin stretched across a blank head. My mind screamed. Rule number 7. If you see a man without a face, ignore him. My body locked in place. The faceless man slowly lifted one arm and pointed directly at me. Then he spoke, in a voice that sounded like dozens of whispers layered together. "Help me." Every instinct told me to run, but the rules said something different. Ignore him. So I did the hardest thing possible. I turned around and walked away. Behind me, the whispering voice followed. "Help me. Help me." 3:42 a.m. Walking away, I forced myself to keep walking. Slow, calm, just like the rules said. Behind me, the whispering voice continued. "Help me, please." The sound echoed softly through the empty corridor, but I didn't turn round. Every instinct in my body begged me to look back, to confirm what I had seen, to understand what that thing was. But the rules existed for a reason, and something deep inside me knew that if I turned around, I might not walk away again. After about 20 seconds, the whispers stopped. Completely. The hallway became silent again. I didn't look back, not even once. Instead, I walked straight to the elevator and pressed the button. The doors opened quickly. Too quickly, like the elevator had already been waiting for me. I stepped inside. The doors began to close, but just before they shut completely, I heard footsteps behind me running fast. The doors closed. The elevator began moving. I never saw what was chasing me. 3:50 a.m. Something is wrong when I returned to the security office. Martin looked at me immediately. "You saw him?" It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "The faceless man." Martin sighed heavily. "Yeah." I sat down across from him. "What is that thing?" Martin stared at the monitors for a long moment before answering. "Something that shouldn't exist." "That doesn't explain anything." Martin rubbed his eyes, then finally spoke. "Westbridge Hospital wasn't always a hospital." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Martin leaned forward slightly. 30 years ago, this building was something else. My stomach tightened. "What?" Martin looked directly at me. "A psychiatric research facility." 3:55 a.m. The truth. Martin continued speaking quietly. "Back in the early 90s, they ran experiments here. Experimental treatments for patients with severe psychological disorders, memory manipulation, sleep deprivation studies, fear response testing." I felt my chest tighten. "That sounds illegal." Martin gave a dry laugh. "It was eventually the government shut the place down. But by then," he paused, "something had already gone wrong." I leaned forward. "What happened?" Martin looked back toward the monitors again. "Some of the patients changed. Not mentally, physically. The room felt colder suddenly. They stopped reacting like normal people. They didn't sleep. They didn't speak. And eventually, they stopped having faces." A cold wave ran down my spine. "You're telling me those things are patients?" Martin shook his head slowly. No, there used to be. 3:58 a.m. the 5th floor. The 5th floor was where the worst experiments happened, Martin continued. That's why the elevator sometimes stops there. But the hospital officially doesn't have a 5th floor anymore. They sealed it off after the facility closed. Concrete walls, steel doors. I remembered the dark hallway I had seen earlier. That place still exists. Martin nodded. And sometimes things come down from there. 4 a.m. the cameras, the clock on the wall clicked forward. 4 a.m. Martin pointed toward the monitors. Time for Rule 10. I looked at the screens carefully. Most hallways were empty, quiet, normal. Then one monitor caught my attention. Hallway C, the camera showed nothing, just an empty corridor. But the motion sensor icon was blinking red, over, and over, and over again. Something invisible was moving through the hallway. Martin immediately grabbed the remote. Turn it off. I quickly shut the monitor down. The screen went black. The motion alert stopped instantly. I exhaled slowly. That thing we saw earlier. Martin nodded. Yeah, it's still here. 4:05 a.m. the final problem. We sat in silence for a few moments. Then suddenly Martin's expression changed. He pointed toward another screen. The emergency entrance camera. The doors were closed, locked, but something stood on the other side of the glass. A person, tall, perfectly still, watching the building. Even through the security camera, I could see the smile. The same smile Martin had described earlier. The person slowly raised one hand and tapped the glass door. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the camera flickered, for just one frame. The figure's face disappeared, smooth, blank, like melted skin. My stomach dropped. There's more than one of them, I whispered. Martin didn't respond, because something worse had just appeared on another monitor. The elevator display. It was moving, up past floor 4, to a place that shouldn't exist. The number changed. 5:10 a.m. the last rule. The elevator doors opened on the camera feed. Darkness poured out from the 5th floor hallway. Something moved inside the shadows, something tall, something wrong. Then, slowly, a figure stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The elevator began descending. 4321 basement. The doors opened. Right outside the security office hallway. Martin slowly stood up, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel, what? He pointed at the paper in my hand. I looked down. For the first time that night, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. At the very bottom of the page, below Rule 10, there was another line when that hadn't been there earlier. Rule number 11, if the elevator comes down from floor 5, leave the building immediately. The hallway outside the security office suddenly echoed with slow footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. Martin grabbed his keys. Time to go. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. Then something tapped gently on the metal once, twice. Then a whisper slid through the gap under the door. A voice that sounded almost human. Security, can you help me? Martin looked at me and said the last thing I ever heard inside Westbridge Hospital. Run.